Thank you very much for coming back after lunch. I know that on day 2, things are going to get a bit sluggish. I really appreciate you coming back. So many of you here have titles with engineer in it. I'm not one of those people. I'm a cultural person. So in a way, I'm a bit of a fraud at this conference. You guys do the thing and I try and help people along the way. Now, the second thing that I'm a fraud for is that the talk is called "It's About the Journey, Not the Destination," and other cliches. Now, I made a bit of a rod for my own back in that I tried to do this with cliches on the screen so that you wouldn't have to pay attention. Now, trying to find cliches to fill half an hour is really hard. So some of these are aphorisms, some of these are witty quotes, some of them are just things that we've heard along the way. All right, so being as you're all here, if you'll indulge me, I'd like to tell you a bit about a story from when I was in my early 20s. In my early 20s, I was an outdoor ed instructor, and as you can tell from my physique, I still don't do that. I used to work in the south of Wales at an outdoor education institution. And what I did is I used to teach people how to do abseiling, rock climbing, bushwalking, or we called it hill climbing, and archery. Now, one of the things that we got asked to do was to go into the local village in the south of Wales and to take part in their village fete. So I went along and I organised to do some archery, and we would take 50 pence off kids and they would get to shoot 3 arrows. And it was to do some community engagement within the local area. So we got there, we set up, we put the archery boss at the front, we put a nice piece of hessian behind, and we had a field behind the archery target that was empty. And so it was nice and safe. It was going to be really easy for us to run. And we were there all day, and there was this one kid who kept coming back, and he was getting really, really good. And he'd come along, and yeah, he's really, really good. He'd pay us 50 pence, and great. Towards the end of the day, he comes back, and we were just about to close up, and we said, "Oh, can we do one more?" Okay, we'll do one more. So he comes along, and he pays us 50 pence, and he draws back. It's the last arrow of the day. And just as he's about to loose, he flinches. Yeah, that's bad, but the hessian will catch it, won't it? And we look, and the arrow has gone over the boss, it's gone over the hessian, and it's gone into that empty field behind. Yeah, that's okay, it's an empty field, we'll be fine. And we look round, that field isn't empty anymore. That field is full of sheep. So here we are trying to do a community engagement piece, and we've just fired an arrow into a field full of sheep. So we look round and I'm panicking, right? I'm thinking, how's this kid going to feel? Oh, this looks terrible. We've probably killed something. And I look round, and there is a sheep with an arrow buried in its neck. It's still alive. Don't worry. This is not a bad story. So this sheep is there. Now, sheep, when they get excited, they do a thing called pronking, which is where they all 4 legs in the air at the same time. Go boop, 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 boop. So that's pronking. Obviously, when a sheep gets an arrow in its neck, it gets excited, so it starts pronking. And every time it goes in the air, the arrow comes down, and as it lands, it drives it in a bit further. Don't worry. Just going to cut to the end and say that the sheep survived. So I am saying, does anybody know where the farmer is? Does anybody know where the farmer is? We find the farmer, and I'm starting to talk to this guy, and I'm so sorry, this is terrible. I mean, we put up the hessian, and we thought everything was going to be okay, but and he said, okay. So we went to the field, and he gets the sheep, and he wrestles the sheep, and he puts it, gets the arrow. He sprays some antiseptic on the wound in the sheep's neck, and I'm like, I'm so sorry, man. I don't know what to say. I can't even believe how this would be. And he says, I'm really sorry I bent your arrow. So what on earth has this got to do with anything? Well, Andrew Hatch yesterday was talking about things that go wrong, and things will go wrong. We set up all of these things in our ways of working to make sure that nothing was going to go wrong. But we can't get everything right. I think ways of working is a bit of an overused cliche. It's something that the banks have taken on, and I don't like it. I still prefer to say that we have the DevOps mindset. So anyway, to begin with the end in mind, I would like you to be able to walk away from here knowing just a bit about Australia Post's journey, our DevOps journey, some of the things that we did wrong, some more of the things that we did wrong, and some of the things that we're trying to do to course correct. Now, we are not trying to say that we know everything, much like the guys before us. That it's do as I say, not do as I do, and your mileage may vary. So take what you want from this, take nothing if you want. Now, Winston Churchill said, "History will be kind to me, for I intend to write it." So I can tell you a bit of the history of what was the Digital Delivery Centre, which was formed in 2012. It was a group with inside Australia Post that was inside IT, formed to be a bit more nimble. It was a business transformation, and the idea was that letters is a dying business, and our then CEO, Ahmed Fahur, had said, how are we going to avoid having a Kodak moment? So the Digital Delivery Centre was spun up to make some changes. Now, standing on the shoulders of giants, either Winston Churchill Isaac Newton or the fourth album by Oasis, your choice. I didn't join until 4 years ago, so much of what has happened is by people who had to do the hard yards by trying to explain a 210-year-old organization how it could do things better, and it was a business transformation. So I've benefited from the people who went before me. I'm not trying to claim that this was all something I did. And also, as people said, as Hatchie said yesterday, 2020 hindsight. We have made decisions along the way that in 2012 and 2013, 2014, 2015, we made decisions that in 2019 we would not make now. And I'm sure that most of you, knowing the tech landscape that exists today and the way that we do work now, you probably wouldn't make the same decisions. So we have this amazing ability to look back and see where we could have done things differently. Now, I'm in awe of the people who did make these transformations and did our first, did do a lot of the work. They made the choices with the technology that they had at the time. So all models are wrong, but some are useful. So the DDC, the Digital Delivery Centre, followed the Spotify model because, well, very similar to the Spotify model. So we had tribes, and they're value-aligned tribes. We have what we now call our sender experience, so the lodgement of parcels, the APIs to do with lodging and the tracking of parcels from a sender point of view. We have our receiver experience, so things like the AusPost website, the iOS and Android apps, the in-flight redirection, those text messages that you get after you've picked something up to tell you that you've picked them up. We've got our payments and financial services group, our digital identity group, and identity services for over-the-counter identity stuff. And we had some supporting functionality we had a central ops team and we had a central systems team. Now that's probably the first learning, right? We had a central ops and a central systems team. So there is no I in team, they tell me. When I joined, we had tried to codify what our culture was. And what we had said was that we were looking for T-shaped people, and we were looking for people who had a DevOps mindset. So we talked about it. Every cloud has a silver lining. So in 2013, Australia Post and the Digital Delivery Centre had made a move towards the cloud. We were doing microservices. We wanted to do things with API first. We built a continuous delivery platform. Now, at that time, we were spinning up EC2 instances. We were using Puppet. We were using Hyra. There were so many scripts, and it was quite a bit of a beast. But it was getting stuff out to production. At that point, we had been, as Ash was saying earlier on, you were talking like months to get stuff to production. And suddenly we were now getting things out to production much, much quicker. We were getting to the point where we could get things out to production 7 to 8 times a day. Now, I know that's not big compared to Amazon thousands of times a day, but this is Australia Post and we didn't need to get things out. We could probably go faster if we wanted to, but do we need to? We also built a tool called InfraViewer, a little Django application that would give a graphical interface to allow us to promote things, do patching, and show what our stacks were and where they were in the order of things. Now, remember I said that we had a central ops team and we had a central systems team? This is a quote from Lewis Carroll about the Red Queen. So, if you want to get somewhere else, you must run at least twice as fast as that. And that's what it really felt like with what we were doing, is that no matter what we were doing, AWS would come out with a new feature, the dev teams would want to get on board with it, we would have to put it into the CDP, and we'd have to release it to the CDP, and you get the picture. So as things were getting faster and faster and faster, we were having to go faster and faster. This is also called the Red Queen hypothesis. I'm a geneticist by training, so this is an evolutionary genetics theory as well. So we were trying to add things like, as things like lambdas came along, and we were using more and more S3. Every time we added one of these, we would have to go into InfraViewer, we'd have to change it, we'd have to change the APIs, and we were making, as I said earlier on, a bit of a rod for our own back. And our ops team was still getting stuff punted over the wall. We all know the diagram, right? We saw it earlier on. So our ops team was a bit disconnected, but we said we were aspiring to be a DevOps organization. We said that we were looking for these T-shaped people. So, were we? So if we use the CALMS acronym of Jez Humble, were we actually where we thought we were? So, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Good old Peter Drucker, right? We thought we had a great culture. I think we had a great culture. We had really good engagement scores. Our people loved what they were doing. They were collaborative, they were innovative, they had a growth mindset, they wanted to come to work, they wanted to work on awesome things. Right, that's awesome. Was it a culture like Google? No. Was it like Seek? No, it's different. This is a massive enterprise, and we were doing the things we wanted. But as we were hiring devs, the devs we were hiring with the idea of getting people with a growth mindset. We wanted people to want more. That's another learning there. We were starting to make a rod for our own back. I keep using that one. So, carry on using Drucker. The human being is a very poorly designed machine tool. So, if we're looking at the A for automation, we had this CDP. It was amazing. It was really great, but it was centrally managed. So, our teams, as they wanted to grow, they couldn't automate. We had a keys to the castle problem. Our central team had to make all the changes to our CDP, and we would say, sorry, you can't do that out in the tribes. It's just not allowed. So automation, while it was really helping us, it was actually getting in the way a little bit. And because we'd automated first, we had this automation first principle, things that people wanted to do, like maybe set up a new security group, they were so buried deep in the automation that people had forgotten how to do them manually, right? So they'd been abstracted away. At the same time, we had our digital ID group who were given remit to kind of go off reservation. They were kind of a JV, and as a result of that, they were not coming into this to our public cloud, they could do what they wanted with guardrails. And they were saying, come on in, the water's fine. Because what they were doing is they were running Kubernetes, they were doing you build it, you run it, and they had a full-on team dedicated to getting stuff out the door. They could tear down everything and replace it. Awesome. And this started to get people a little agitated. It was like, they can do this, why can't we? So in terms of the lean, yep, I think we'd kind of done that really well. We were doing things iteratively and adaptive, except for the central teams. The systems team was trying to plan to upgrade things, but there was so much technical debt that they were in real trouble. They couldn't inject themselves into the program increments of the safe trains because they were so busy just running. So I know there's a difference between metrics and statistics, but we had so many metrics. We had, 4.8 stars on the App Store, great. Hey. We had 1 billion API calls in the last quarter coming through the API gateway. Are they meaningful? Is that a meaningful statistic that you had 1 billion calls? What happens if half of them are 500s? People were using these vanity metrics, but they weren't using them to advance themselves. They weren't trying to learn from them. They were quite vain. We weren't looking at things like feature lead time or mean time to resolution or any of those things. So as they say, a problem shared is a problem halved, or somebody said to me, a problem shared is problem doubled. But we said we were using the Spotify model, so we had COPs and guilds, and we'd always been really proud of our communities of practice. So we had a really strong front-end community of practice, and we had a really strong server-side COP. We didn't really have a DevOps COP. We tried it, but what it ended up being was that people would come and there would just be a laundry list of please fix this, please fix this, please fix this. So culturally, we knew that we wanted people to share. The word tribe. What are tribes good for? Usually tribes is used because they're different to somebody else, right? So we were talking about tribes. When we talk about sharing, we were really good at sharing within a tribe, not so good at sharing between tribes. So things that one tribe would learn wasn't necessarily being shared with other tribes. So our showcases were fantastic, but they were only very locally done. So another problem. So I don't want you to think this was doom and gloom. We were still smashing stuff out. We were still deploying really regularly. We were quite happy, except there were two teams that were really under the pump. The ops team, because they were punt, and then there was the systems team who were constantly like, when are you going to fix up the CDP so that it can do Cognito or whatever the new feature was? So the great news was that we knew that culturally, DevOps was what we wanted to do. Aspirationally, as a mindset, DevOps was the way that we could get around this. We wanted to be more forward-thinking. We wanted to have faster cycle times. And the great thing was, we had, about 2 years ago, organizational change thrust upon us. Now, Mark will probably mentioned it yesterday, and anybody who's in a large organization knows that just wait 2.5 years and the organization will change. So so when we had this organizational change, we had a new managing director. We had a new EGM of our business unit. We were product innovation, and there we were, and we had 3 GMs in about 8 months. Talk to me afterwards if you want to know more about that. But we wanted to be there from soup to nuts. So in terms of us being product engineering, we wanted to be there from ideation all the way to operational. We didn't want people to just come to us and say, just build me that. There had been a bit of a semantic thing about us being the digital delivery center that people seemed to think that we were just a body shop, that they could just come along and say, we've got this idea, build it. So we wanted to get past that. There's an adage that says that there was a CEO, he went along to something like this, and he saw somebody talking about company cultures, and he turns to his HR director and says, get me one of those. We already had a pretty good culture. We had people that were forward thinking, they wanted to do more. The people we had in the tribes, the developers we were hiring, were all saying, please let me do more stuff. I want to get into the infrastructure. Please don't hold me at arm's length. So we knew that we could maintain this culture and we could reinforce it if we started thinking about DevOps as the central pillar of what we wanted to do. But we had to get real buy-in from our new EGM. So our new EGM comes along, and we distilled Calm. We didn't think that Calms would buy it, so we distilled it down to, through culture and automation, we save money and accelerate product development. So we're going to get stuff out, and we're going to make it cheaper. Key word there is the culture, right? For me, that's the key word, right? How we're going to do it. Now, another adage. There was a story that there was a man who was walking through the countryside, let's say in the UK, and he comes across a farmer in a field, and he says, can you tell me how to get to name of the next town? And the farmer says, I wouldn't start from here. We were already pretty well established, and we were getting stuff out the door, and we needed to change. How are we going to change? So as other people have said, go and get some external people to come and validate what you're doing. So we got our friends at Digio to come in, and they looked at our developer tooling and the opportunities we had with our people and what we could do to try and drive things forward. Key thing, culture. People are our most valuable asset. This, for me, like I said, I'm a cultural person, right? We need to make sure that we're looking after our people. Andrew talked yesterday about psychological safety. We had situations where people were coming up to our systems team and saying, who do I have to scream at to get something fixed? That's not what we wanted. All right? That person was equally under pressure, but that was not the way to manifest itself. So I'm going to talk about Daniel Pink for a second here. So I love Daniel Pink. I love the autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Autonomy. We had the tribes, we had the teams within the tribes. They were fairly autonomous within an area, and they could set things within some guardrails. Purpose, they were value stream aligned, so that they had a reason for doing these things. Mastery, this is probably where we were letting people down. We had people who were brilliant, but what we couldn't do is we couldn't give them opportunities to show their mastery. So they'd come in, we'd hired these DevOps people with forward-thinking ideas, and we'd say, oh, you know about DevOps, and they'd come in, and you say, well, you can't look at the infrastructure as code. That's this team over here. So we needed to change that. One of the things that my GM, Fiona, and I have been working on is that the only thing worse than training your employees and having them leave is not training them, having them stay. Yeah? What's the point of having such great talent and then you don't give them opportunities? And I'm not talking about training here necessarily, like all of you go and do AWS and get certified. I'm talking about soft skills as well, right? How do we develop our people so that we can use this growth mindset that we were hiring for, and we could actually really take advantage, not take advantage of our people, but we could actually grow them, right? We've got fantastic engineers who could help so much more. We desperately wanted to avoid a build it and they will come. So we started talking about building CDP2, right? Mark was talking yesterday about getting some branding. We started talking about doing this and branding it. And it kind of leaked out and people were going, what's going to be in CDP2? And we said, oh, we'll get back to you on that one. And what we needed to do was actually go and embed with the teams. So we started to push our people out into the teams The systems team started to embed with the teams to say, well, look, we can do this bit down here and allow you to do this bit up here because this is where you're going to add the most value, and you don't really, do you really want to be involved with VPCs and things like that? ACLs, maybe? So we had to come to a happy medium of where we could find the best fit. With all of these things, there comes some form of a holy war, whether it's tabs versus spaces. So one of my systems engineers, he absolutely loves the fact that people should be in there, they should be in the console of AWS, and they should be doing everything natively. Other people will say, use something like build kite and abstractions. We're going to have so many of these. I had a meeting recently, and one of the engineering managers turned to me and says, can we just agree that Kubernetes is one? And like, well, the other guys over there, they're using Lambdas, and these guys over here are doing some containers, and these guys over here are doing Fargate. So, we know there's going to be more of these discussions. And it's not me as a leader in the organization to say that which one's right or wrong. I want these guys to be able to bubble it up, right? These are the smart guys. So, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We still have 300 odd assets that are on the old CDP. They still have to be deployed on a regular basis, and we need to make sure that we can get them out the door. We don't want to just stop. Our engineers can see that maybe there's a new world over here where people have got their own accounts and they're not encumbered by the CDP, and they can use code deploy and code pipeline, and they can get things out. So how do we engage our people so that they don't want to just run off to the new thing and they don't end up in the team that's just looking after the old? We need to move across. So it's something we still haven't fixed. We want to move to a you build it, you run it mindset, but we can't do that across 40 teams. We can't do that in one go because they're not ready. So we need to transition to that. Underpinning all of this, as I said at the beginning, is the mindset. We want people to have that DevOps mindset. We want them to understand and grow. We want them to be thinking about how they can improve. If we do that at AusPost, and we know that we're going to be part of people's journey, we know that people don't come to Australia Post and they're going to stay there for 40 odd years. They're going to move to other organisations in the same way that people will move from your organisations to Australia Post or to we do hire, But the point here is that on a rising tide, all the boats will rise. So if you guys are all here thinking about how you can do DevOps better, and we're talking about it too, then the kind of talent that's out there must be improving, all right? And they all lived happily ever after. Not yet. We're still aspiring. We're going to do things in the future. My GM, Fiona, talks about advise, deliver, and maintain. Our group will advise and deliver and maintain products. The hard thing for us is that maintain part. DevOps, fantastic in that growth curve when you've got lots of features going out. What about those products that are just sitting there that some product manager likes because it's turning over $1 million or something a year? How do you do that? Do you put that back into a central team? How do you make sure that it's being patched and things like that? So we know that we still got things that we need to address, and we're not perfect. In no way are we perfect. But it's that mindset. We want to do this, and we're going to push ahead. We're going to start from a position of yes, rather than starting from the idea that we can't do this, because that's not the way we've done it in the past. Anyway, thank you very much. If you want to have a chat with me, I'll be around for a little bit afterwards. Thank you.